So the other and the largest new amount of funding is $70 million for acquisition of working forest land. And the language says that the department first has to buy replacement land. And then after we've purchased replacement land, we don't have to buy a full $70 million worth before we do, the second phases. But this is an acknowledgement that the legislature wants us to buy land first before we start replacing land. And so as we're acquiring land, we may then set aside up to 2,000 acres of land for carbon sequestration. So that would, we would buy replacement land, then we would do a transfer so that that land that we would be setting aside is now no longer trust land. So it's keeping the beneficiaries whole. So we can set aside up to 2,000 acres of that land. And then the remaining land that we're acquiring would be used for those encumbered lands counties. And that includes Wahkiakum, Skamania, Pacific, Clallam, and Jefferson County. And so we would then buy more working forest land for those counties as that Trust 01, the state forest land replacement. So it doesn't have a requirement that we identify already encumbered land and move to natural area status and all of that. It's just buy more replacement land. So it removes that step of just moving trust designations around. So it's just buy more land for those counties.
And Duane, I think you should add just some one. I'll add one thing, and then I want you to just add more. But one, the 70 million is also set to only be allowed to be utilized west of the Cascades, with the exception of part of Klickitat and Skamania. So it has a very geographical focus, which in a large part makes a lot of sense, given there's a lot of the counties on the west side, as we know, that have been encumbered by the HCP that this board passed, as well as the previous one. Also, it's an area where we're seeing the greatest threat of conversion of our forest lands, just with the population growth. And I think, Duane, it's also a good opportunity, just, and maybe the board has background completely, I know a number of people do, but the encumbered piece, I think, just give a quick explanation, because this is an issue that has been, many of the counties and different stakeholders have been really working hard to address the encumbered lands component for many, many years.
Right.
And we've not necessarily had as much of this kind of investment and funding in it. And it's pretty significant.
Right, exactly. And so, yes, those encumbered lands counties, we call them, it was acknowledged, I think, as far back as 2016, maybe even earlier, that as the department, put into place the habitat conservation plan for murrelet and owls, that there were certain rural counties that were disproportionately impacted, and especially counties that, again, our timber volume is a significant percentage of their operating budget. And so the legislature asked the department to look at that problem with a stakeholder group, with those counties, with timber industry representatives, with conservation organizations, and the superintendent's office all participated on that and came up with a number of recommendations to the legislature. In the meanwhile, they were providing that state forest replacement land funding that every biennium provide us $5 to $7 million to do those smaller transfers. And so we have made requests of the legislature for some significant amounts of funding to implement the recommendations of that working group, and had not to date been very successful. In the previous biennium, we did receive $10 million to start acquiring working forest land for those counties. Originally, it was the three counties in Southwest Washington. In that budget proviso, it included Jefferson and Clallam counties. So Jefferson and Clallam will share $5 million, and the other three counties will share $5 million. And so this next, source of funding is going to be a significant amount. that we'll be able to start acquiring even more working land. And again, that also goes back to House Bill 1460, concepts like land pools where they can share ownership of parcels that we may acquire and things like that. We've been working with the Association of Counties with those encumbered land counties for a number of years to work through all of this, but this will be a significant and hopefully continuing source of funding to fully implement that encumbered lands plan. Parts of that, and as the commissioner noted, it is very prescriptive in the geographic area west of the Cascade Crest, all of Skamania County, and then those portions of Klickitat County. Other requirements in the proviso for that 2,000 acres of lands that we may set aside for carbon sequestration. We have to come and identify those lands by the end of December, present that to the board and then the legislature. That allows everybody to know where those lands are that we're talking about. It provides certainty for us as we're trying to implement our sustainable harvest, that we're not guessing and second guessing and setting aside all sorts of things. We're going to identify those lands by the end of December. And so the board, the legislature, and the public will know which lands we're talking about. Yeah. No. Okay. We also received in that budget proviso $2.5 million to convene a work group to collaborate on approaches to conservation and management of structurally complex forests on BNR managed lands, looking at the potential to increase carbon sequestration and storage in forests and wood products, generate predictable revenue to beneficiaries, maintain the timber supply that supports local industry, address economic needs of rural counties, and develop an understanding of the current timber supply by region and impacts to regional wood supply from management changes, potentially contract with universities or other researchers to develop a common understanding of carbon accounting and quantification methodologies to assess sequestration and storage both in wood products and the forest, and report the group's findings by December 1st, 2023. We think that might have been an error in final drafting, and we'll be talking with the legislature about potentially extending that. We will provide a report. It may be an interim report by the end of December. And also $500,000 in that to investigate hiring of brokers to assist with acquiring of land. It will be significant for us, helping our staff actually go out there and find $70 million worth of land to acquire.
Thanks, Duane. There's a lot there. Just one comment, just want folks to appreciate how much was able to be accomplished in this session, and also the importance of the cap and invest revenues for the Natural Climate Solutions account, which helped pay for much of this work, which we wouldn't have if we didn't have that program in place. A couple of things now. Could you just talk a little bit about the 70 million counties have a role? I don't think you mentioned that.
Right. Yeah. So in as we acquire replacement land, those 2,000 acres that we may set aside for carbon sequestration, the counties where we're looking to set those lands aside, they do have to agree to that. And that's whether it's on county trust land or common school, CEP&RI, or any other trust. And that's in recognition that in certain counties, again, the forest product industry is the main industry in that county. And those counties want and they need a voice. They don't want, potentially to see, 2,000 acres all placed in one very rural dependent county that has one mill that they're trying to keep alive. And so those counties have to agree with our placing lands aside under this proviso.
Duane, can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
So just to clarify, my understanding is that the 70 million beyond the 2,000 acres for carbon, that the counties also get that, say that agreement that lands purchased with the 70 million for benefit of another county. Still, is there an agreement point with so if Wahkiakum, Skamania Pacific, Wahkiakum want to purchase something in Skagit County, there's at least a conversation with the Skagit County commissioners.
Correct, through any of the, and that would just, that lives in that House Bill 1460.
Yes.
That as, if we're developing land pools where Wahkiakum County, Skamania County, and Pacific may be, all share in the revenue that's generated on new lands that we acquire in Skamania. They have to have a county agreement between the three saying, yes, we're all going to share in this. And if we all say, we're going to buy a lot of land in Clark County for the benefit of Skamania, Wahkiakum, et cetera, Clark County also has to agree. And that's, again, through that encumbered lands work, that's that recognition that we're buying a lot of land in Clark County and we're taking, lands out of their tax rolls because trust lands aren't, taxed under property tax. That there has to be that acknowledgement. And also, they all want to make sure they agree in the management of those lands now and into the future. So
Because it's the revenue piece in the future that will transfer to
exactly.
out of geographic area, which is a real stretch in thinking. The commission, we have discussed it a new number of times in our Timber County caucus, but it's a stretch. But recognizing that in order to provide enough wood for all these houses and structures that need to be built, we need to work together beyond geographic boundaries is a real recognition and implicit in that $70 million spend.
Right, exactly. And that even goes to that $2.5 million in the work group that, are the wood baskets. They don't stop at county boundaries. Carbon doesn't stop at county boundaries. Most things don't stop at the county boundary. So there has to be that cooperation.
Did you want to say?
Yeah. Just another thing, since this is coming to the board, the replacement lands and so forth, I hope that we can spend time this summer, looking at the criteria here in public meetings and then eventually maybe draft list of parcels or something and not waiting until December to do that. So we'd like to make sure that that's understood.
Right. Yeah.
Work if we do that.
Yeah, I mean, so board members, obviously, first of all, this is a significant opportunity. I want to again sort of reiterate what you said about this is unprecedented, right? The Climate Commitment Act, this funding has not largely been there for sort of natural resources. I know the agency has been, always working to get more and more funding, but it's hard when it's competing against all those other really important issues like housing and education. And so this is a significant opportunity. We are taking an approach where we need to go quickly, but we need to not go so fast that we trip over ourselves and get it wrong, right? Everything from the importance of county's perspective and land being taken out of their tax base, land being added to their working forest land base, to the conservation side that everybody has an interest in. We will be going, I would say, first of all, what we're going to be doing is reaching out to the counties. There's actually, it'll be coming to a suite of counties. We've already been working with WASAC, and they've been asking which counties are really interested in really engaging on this issue and really wanting to be involved. We're going out with a letter to them saying, look, let's work on this forest strategy together. So it isn't something that's happening to the county last minute. It's happening without a sort of understanding of what their needs and interests are, everything from the working forest side to the conservation, natural area side to the wood basket. So that letter will be going out, and then a conversation is going to be happening at that local level with our team and the county on that. And then we will be sort of developing this larger criteria as we're listening and bringing the broad group of stakeholders together and having it inform. And I think what we're going to cast is a large net around all the lands up there. There's a lot of inholdings that are around state and federal lands that really challenge the connectivity of the landscape for everything from fish and wildlife to the context of actually making it easier to be able to manage those lands for working forest land. But we'll bring that suite of criteria to the board.
Can you move forward a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan, my apologies. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, I will lean forward. Lean into this conversation, Dan. Anyway, so I we'll sort of set up that framework in likely the next month and bring that to the board so you're aware of it and we can get your input as well as the community and public and county's input.